Hey guys, tonight we slip beneath thunderclouds and sea foam, diving into a divine feud that reshaped the ancient world and still echoes through myth. You're about to stand between a lightning bolt and a trident, locked in the eternal tension of two godly brothers who never quite figured out how to share. You're Poseidon now. Yes, that Poseidon. Lord of the sea, god of earthquakes, horses, and that permanent salty scowl. But tonight, you're not all power and waves yet. Tonight, you start in the dark. You probably won't survive this, especially not when you're own. Father just swallowed you whole. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I want to know who's sharing this tide with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first memory is silence. And not the peaceful, float in a bubble kind. No, it's warm and wet and tight. You can't move, you can't breathe, and the walls are pulsing with a strange rhythm. Every once in a while, something stirs beside you. A foot? A face? Another swallowed. Sibling. Welcome to Cronus' stomach. Population: 5 very confused Olympians. You don't know how long you've been in here. Time drips like oil, slow and thick. The only constant is the weight of betrayal coiling around your chest. This isn't just imprisonment, it's your own father, terrified of being overthrown, devouring you at birth like some divine snack pack. Historians still argue whether this grotesque baby swallowing spree was meant as symbolic patriarchy gone wrong, or simply a cautionary tale about really bad parenting. Either way, you're part of it now. And it's getting crowded in here. Every so often, something stirs, the warmth of Hera's elbow, the twitch of Demeter's knee. You learn their presence is like a sixth sense. You don't speak because you can't, but you feel frustration, sorrow, and a quiet, rising fury. Meanwhile, outside, Olympus is quiet. Cronus rules. His paranoia pulses like a storm cloud over the world. Gaia, your grandmother, whispers warnings into dreams. Prophecies bubble through mortal minds like bad wine. A change is coming. But inside your squishy prison, change feels a million years away. You're not alone in your resentment. Hestia, always still, hallantly calculating. Demeter pulses with a motherly rage, and Hera. Well, Hera seems to be planning something. Probably wedding revenge. Even before marriage was a thing, you remember something odd in the dark. A taste, bitter metal? Maybe the first hint of Zeus, your baby brother, somehow missed by Cronus and spirited away by Rhea, your mother. She tricked Cronus with a rock, wrapped it in a blanket, handed it to him like a divine happy meal, and Cronus chomped down without even checking the flavor. Cute trick. You'd laugh if you weren't surrounded by stomach acid. Rhea, clever and heartbroken, hides Zeus on earth. Raised by nymphs, suckled by a goat, yes, a goat, Amalthea, a divine goat, of course. Later, one of her horns becomes the cornucopia, symbol of abundance. A fun mythological side hustle. Meanwhile, Zeus grows. You can't see it, but you feel it somewhere out there. He's getting strong, cocky, probably working on his six-pack. You're not sure if he's your savior or your competition. Inside Cronus, the darkness starts to feel like home. A terrible, gnawing, wound-like home. You dream of salt and storms, of waves big enough to swallow mountains. You don't know what water really is yet, but it's already in your blood. You dream in tides. Then, one day shift, a tremor. A new taste in the air. Not bile, not sorrow. Something electric. Zeus. He single quotes us here. And he's bringing an emetic. The myths disagree on the details. Some say he gave Cronus a potion that made him throw you all up, first Hestia, then you, then the rest. Others say he sliced Cronus open like a fish, Honestly, both sound dramatic enough to be true, but the result? Air, blinding light, sound that scrapes your bones. You tumble out, gasping, slick with divine stomach juices, and land like a newborn. God, not just reborn unleashed. You blink. Hera is coughing beside you. Hades rubs his eyes. Demeter stretches her limbs for the first time in eternity. It feels like the beginning of something enormous. And Zeus, standing tall, smug, golden curls bouncing like he's in a shampoo ad. He smiles. You're welcome. You want to punch him. You also kind of want to hug him. But mostly, you want to take control of something. Anything. Because after years of silent compression, you need space to move. Zeus talks about battle, about rebellion, about throwing the Titans into Tartarus, that pit beneath the pit. You listen, nod. The fire he started is spreading, and now you're part of the inferno. Still, something itches at your ribs. You didn't choose to be swallowed. You didn't ask to be saved. And if Zeus thinks that makes him king by default, well, you make a note to have a little chat about that later. But not yet. For now you all rise together, new gods born from stomach acid and fury. The war is coming. And this time, you're not going in quietly. You stand on solid ground for the first time in your immortal life, your legs shaky, lungs still learning the rhythm of breath. The world is huge, too bright, too loud. You squint into the sun, smell ash and sap and ozone. And somewhere beneath all that, the weight of revenge. It's not just your siblings gathering around Zeus. There's a coalition forming, half whispers and half vows. Titans rule the cosmos now, but their grip is slipping. Cronus, your father/devourer, sits uneasily on his throne. And you've got questions. Sharp, salt-soaked ones. Why did he do it? You don't say this out loud, of course. The others are busy rallying arms and alliances. Zeus is already recruiting old monsters and half-dead allies like he's assembling some godly boy band. But you're not interested in the show. You're turning inward, wondering what kind of father eats his children and calls it destiny. Historians still argue whether Cronus' motives were purely driven by fear of prophecy, or if he symbolized the cyclic fear every generation has of being replaced. Freud would probably high-five him either way. But none of that matters when you're the one who lived it from the inside. You watch Cronus from the distance of a cliff edge once. He looks like stone wrapped in sorrow, his golden scythe slung across his back like it weighs too much. And yet, he still radiates that Titan authority. You hate him. You love him. You want to destroy him and also understand him. Good luck untangling that. But the others are more focused. Hades sharpens his cunning in silence. Hera polishes grudges like gems. Demeter stirs the earth with bare feet, whispering to buried seeds. And Zeus, always Zeus, is loud and golden, and ready. He wants a war, and now that you're free, he's getting one. You don't fight for Zeus. You fight for your own freedom. The Titanomachi, as later poets will call it, isn't so much a war as a drawn-out, planet-shaking tantrum. 10 years of storms, lava, mountains crumbling, stars flickering out like snuffed candles. You throw waves that drown valleys. Earthquakes ripple from your heels. Your trident, yes, you have one now, freshly forged by the Cyclopes, is a thing of terror. It cracks the ground, stirs whirlpools, pulls lightning from the air. By the way, fun fact, the Cyclopes not only give you your trident, they also forge Hades' helm of invisibility and Zeus' thunderbolt. Yes, the same Cyclopes Odysseus will later annoy by blinding one of their kin. But that's another bedtime story. Back to yours. You start gaining a reputation. Not as the good brother, but as the force of nature. Your fury is tidal. And yet, you start noticing something. Every time a battle is won, Zeus is the one mortals praise. His bolt splits the sky. Awe and offerings. You crush a mountain range with a single quake. Panic and prayers to stop. Hades disappears an entire battlefield into the underworld. Whispers and fear. It's not fair, but it is familiar. You've always been in the dark, even after freedom. One night, after a particularly brutal skirmish, lava rivers, cloud ruptures, one titan turned into a constellation. Zeus finds you alone by the sea. You're staring into the waves, your hair slick with stormwater. He claps your shoulder like your comrades. Equals. We're winning, he says. We'll rule the world, brother. You don't reply. Not because you agree, but because you already feel the next war stirring. Spoiler alert, you do win, eventually. The Titans fall, dragged into Tartarus, chained and echoing in eternal gloom. The Cyclopes build gates of bronze to keep them in. Victory. And then comes the lot. You don't get to choose your domain. No dramatic rock, paper, scissors. Just fate, or maybe Zeus's stacked game. Historians still argue if the lot was real or just mythological PR for a power grab. Zeus draws the sky. King of gods, Lord of thunder. Captain Spotlight. Hades draws the underworld, ruler of the dead, keeper of shadows. And you? You draw the sea. Now on paper, it sounds majestic. Oceans, storms, fish with teeth the size of horses. But it feels like the leftover kingdom, unruly, fluid, hard to pin down. You say nothing, but inside something sours. Again. Zeus immediately claims Olympus, high and visible and impossibly golden. He throws feasts with nectar and ambrosia. Lightning flickers. Behind his words, mortals build altars to him overnight. His cult grows. Meanwhile, you retreat to the deep. Your palace, because yes, you're still a god, forms undersea, carved into coral and black stone. The walls pulse with light from jellyfish and lost stars. The trident hums beside your throne. It's beautiful, sure, but lonely and cold. You sit there sometimes, staring at the surface light above, listening to the thunder far above, where your brother basks in praise. You wonder if he even remembers the stomach walls, the silence, the pact, unspoken, forged in digestive acid. Your temples are fewer, your worshippers, sailors and islanders, afraid of shipwrecks. They pray for your temperance, not your love. You start learning something about yourself. You're a god who gives and takes grudgingly. You crash waves on beaches just to remind mortals who really cradles their continents. And sometimes, just sometimes, you wonder what would have happened if you'd drawn the sky instead. You visit Olympus less and less. And when you do, Zeus greets you with the warmth of a man trying not to offend a hurricane. He knows. He has to know. But he never apologizes. Because why would he? He won, and you're still wondering if you even got to play. You're back underwater. The sea cradles you in its cold arms, humming with quiet resentment. Not yours, at least, not only yours. It's as if the water itself knows you got cheated. The tide pulses with your mood. Some waves crash harder on shorelines for no other reason than your irritation. Up on Olympus, Zeus is busy hosting another one of his grand feasts. All golden goblets, harp-playing muses, and thunderous laughter echoing down from the clouds. You try to avoid Olympus whenever you can, but messages keep floating down, requests, commands, invitations disguised as orders. You don't always answer, because here's the truth. Being god of the sea isn't just about dolphins and shipwrecks. The ocean is unknowable, deep, unforgiving. It remembers things Zeus would rather forget. And so do you. You decide to make your realm reflect that. You build it piece by piece, coral fang by obsidian slab. Your palace, deep beneath the Aegean, becomes a labyrinth of strange geometry and whispering currents. Mortals can barely comprehend it, many drown just trying to glimpse it. Even gods get a little uneasy near its gates. Inside, your throne pulses with a dull blue glow. The trident leans beside you, always humming like a living thing. Not many visit, which suits you just fine. But time, even for immortals, presses forward, one day. You're called to the surface not by Zeus this time, but by fate. There's a mortal city, small and sun-drenched, where the king is building walls. Troy. You arrive in disguise, naturally. Gods love that trick. A bearded man, dusty sandals, no divine aura in sight. You and Apollo, yes, even Apollo, the golden boy, offer your services as laborers. You help build Troy's walls, stone by stone, brick by stubborn brick. It's a rare moment of unity. Sweat, sunburns, shared laughter, well, as much laughter as you allow. You shape the foundations with your bare hands. The sea sings nearby. Apollo crafts harmonics in the mortar. For once, no lightning bolts, no petty rivalries. Just work. Then the king Laomedon, forgettable name, unforgettable treachery, refuses to pay. You ask once, calmly. He laughs. Bad move. You don't just get angry. You make example. You send a sea monster to ravage the coast. Huge, slithering, salt-crusted, its breath alone kills crops. Mortals scream, beg, pray. And for once, those prayers don't go to Zeus, they go to you. Not in worship, but in terror. Historians still debate whether this tale symbolizes divine justice or petty overreaction. Honestly, bit of both. Eventually, Hercules shows up and slays the beast. Of course he does. Zeus's golden demigod cleanup crew. Laomedon dies anyway. You never touch Troy again. But you never forget the laughter. Either. The next time you see Zeus, you don't even try to hide your contempt. You could have warned me, you mutter. Warned you? He raises a brow, thunder crackling faintly in his beard. Poseidon. You're a god. Act like one. It's always like that with him. Casual dismissal. Barely veiled superiority. Like he's forgotten who stood beside him during the Titan War. Like you're just some ocean manager on the company roster. And yet, you don't lash out. Not yet. Because something is brewing. A tension thicker than seawater. You start sensing it in small things. Mortals whisper of storms before they form. Whales flee regions they once loved. Even your dolphins, usually cheerful idiots, refuse to leap when commanded. You dream more now. Violent dreams. Not of war, but of drowning Zeus. Of wrapping him in waves so vast they scrape the stars. You wake with your palace trembling. Deep sea vents belching heat like underwater volcanoes. And the other gods? They notice. Athena keeps her distance. Apollo sends you fewer messages. Even Hades, stoic, unflinching Hades, asks you if you're feeling all right. You tell him the sea is moody. Always has been. But the truth? You're not all right. You're starting to feel something new, not anger. Not envy. Displacement. You were supposed to rule something grand. But you got the deep end. The literal one. And just as you begin to accept this, just as the tide inside you starts to settle, Zeus announces something that makes your trident buzz with rage. He wants to build a new order, a stricter one. Laws, enforcement, hierarchy. A kingdom, he calls it, as if Olympus wasn't already one. He even starts sending divine emissaries, Hermes, mostly to check on how other gods are managing their realms. Managing. You nearly hurl a kraken at him. Instead, you return to the sea. You command a trench to open, wider and deeper than ever before. A scar across the ocean floor. Mortals will one day call it the Mariana Trench right now. It's a reminder you're not just a wave. You're the abyss beneath. One night, you sit in your palace, watching stormlight flicker through layers of water. You whisper to the waves, not words, just feeling. They shudder. Carry your mood outward. Somewhere above, Olympus trembles slightly. Zeus notices. He always notices eventually, but this time, he doesn't say anything. Because even thunder fears the sea when the sea decides to rise. You sit atop a throne carved from black coral and leviathan bone, your fingers curled around the trident as a current tugs faintly at your hair. You've never truly liked thrones too rigid, too still, but this one at least listens when you think dark thoughts. Zeus is changing the rules. You knew it wouldn't stop at sky, sea, and underworld. Not with him. He was never going to share power. Not really. He just needed you to help win the war. And now that it's won, he's trying to rewrite the fine print. He sends decrees. You ignore them. He calls for meetings. You decline. You make waves instead, literally. The oceans churn. Earthquakes shake coastal temples. Mortals panic, building statues in your name and sacrifices on their shores. You don't ask for these things. You don't even particularly like them. But the attention, at least, feels honest. And just as you begin crafting an identity in solitude, just as the sea finally begins to feel like yours, the heavens reach in and try to rearrange your depths. It starts with a summons, not from Zeus. This time from mortals. They need help. You're curious enough to listen. You rise from the depths one night, shimmering with seawater, barnacle-lined beard, catching the moonlight. A village is flooding. Not because of you this time, but because mortals built too close to the river's mouth. Ignoring every whisper from the tide, they beg. God of the sea, they cry, save us. You consider it. And then you part the waters. Just a little. Just enough for them to escape. Just enough for their huts to remain standing. The thanks that follows is clumsy goats. Gold, song sung off key, but something about it warms your bones. Not power, not fear, recognition, maybe even reverence. Not because you're Zeus's brother or a trident-wielding legend, but because you acted on your own terms. Still, the satisfaction is short-lived. Back on Olympus, word spreads. Poseidon's taking sides with mortals now. Zeus summons you. This time you go. Your arrival is met with tension. The air crackles. The other gods glance sideways, as if waiting for a storm to burst from your nostrils. You don't storm, you glide. Calm, contained, as the sea often is just before it consumes an entire fleet. Zeus stands atop his marble dais, lightning circling one hand like a pet snake. He smiles thinly. Brother, he says, I hear you've been active. Didn't know I needed permission, you reply. Inspecting a bowl of ambrosia like it's a cracked clam, he frowns. There's an argument. Of course there is. Words, like order and jurisdiction and the balance of divine influence, are tossed around like driftwood. You barely listen. Because what he really means is, you're not staying in your lane. The debate ends the way it always does, with Zeus declaring victory through sheer volume and drama. You leave Olympus, your mood coiled tight around your spine. And that's when the next insult hits. The gods have decided to divide divine labor even further. They'll be assigning specific functions: love, war, harvest, wisdom. Domains within. Domains. Apollo gets light and music. Ares gets war. Athena gets reason and battle strategy. And you? You're offered horses. Yes, horses. You blink. Not storms. Not chaos. Horses. Now. Sure, horses are majestic. You even made them once, in a fit of creativity involving sea foam and boredom. But that was an afternoon experiment, not a lifelong assignment. You reject the title. Zeus shrugs. Then don't complain when mortals don't know what to pray for. It's the most thinly veiled slight yet. A reduction of your power into something symbolic, harmless, decorative. You retreat deeper into the ocean than ever before. Past the reach of sunlight, into the trenches where creatures blink with ancient, unnameable eyes. Down here, even light fears. You don't speak for weeks, but the sea listens, and it begins to reflect your anger. Storms swell without being summoned. Whirlpools dance across shipping routes. Sea serpents appear in waters once calm. The other gods whisper, is Poseidon losing control? You're not. You're proving a point. Still, there's one thing you don't expect. A visit. From Hera. She doesn't come down often. She hates the damp, the salt, the ever-present sense that something might be watching from the dark. But she comes anyway, her sandals barely wet as she steps into your throne room. You're not the only one tired of Zeus, she says, brushing aside a jellyfish like a curtain. You raise an eyebrow. She explains how he oversteps, how he ignores the old vows, how he claims king when he was only ever supposed to be first among equals. You listen. You always liked Hera's ruthlessness, even if it's usually pointed elsewhere. And then she says it. What if we restrained him? Just long enough to remind him he bleeds. You don't agree. Not immediately, but later that night, the ocean surface flashes with a strange light. The sky above Olympus darkens not with your storm, but with something more subtle. The beginning of a plot. Historians still debate whether the gods ever truly tried to overthrow Zeus if Hera, Athena, and you once conspired to bind him in his sleep. Some say it's an allegory. Others swear it's truth, buried in myth. You, of course, know exactly what happened, and you're already calculating how tight the chains would have to be. The plan is simple, ridiculously ambitious, wildly dangerous, and guaranteed to ignite the heavens, but still simple. You, Hera, and Athena, the only gods bold or bitter enough to even consider it, will bind Zeus in his sleep. It sounds impossible. But here's the trick. Even the king of the gods has to sleep sometime. Even lightning dims. You remember the first night you bring it up aloud. You're in a coastal cave, the tide lapping just beyond, the walls damp and whispering with seafoam secrets. Athena leans against a barnacle-studded pillar, sharpening her spear without looking at you. Hera stands very still, her robes swaying like kelp in the current. If we fail, she says quietly, we'll be chained next to the Titans. You nod because you would be. This isn't just sibling rivalry anymore, this is divine treason. But oh, if it works. For once, you feel something flicker that isn't rage. Hope? Maybe. Or maybe just the thrill of finally doing something unfair to Zeus for once. Athena brings the brains. Hera, the distractions. You bring the force, you all wait for the right moment. Zeus asleep, his thunderbolts tucked safely into that ridiculous golden basket he thinks no one knows about. And then you strike. Ropes enchanted by Hera, unbreakable. Cords crafted from the sinews of Nyx's shadows and the breath of old gods. You move fast, trident glowing, sea-slicked and silent. Zeus doesn't even stir until the final knot pulls tight. Then he roars. Oh, you've never heard anything like it. The clouds scream, mountains shudder, the stars themselves seem to flinch. You'd almost feel bad, almost, if not for the centuries of being silenced, sidelined, and assigned horse duty. Hera steps forward, regal and cold. You've forgotten, she says, that the sky is not yours alone. Athena adds, you rule by thunder, not by right. You say nothing. Just watch as Zeus, bound in chains older than the Titans themselves, thrashes against the idea that someone dared to say no. But power is rarely that simple. The other gods panic. They flee Olympus or freeze in place. The rumor spreads like wildfire soaked in nectar. Zeus is overthrown. Enter Thetis. Ah, Thetis, sun-nymph, diplomat, occasional babysitter of the divine. She pleads with you first, then begs, then threatens. She says Zeus has to be freed or the very balance of heaven will collapse. That if you unseat him, no one else can hold it all together. That the mortals will revolt, the stars will misalign. And this part's her favorite. You'll look just like Cronus. That last part cuts deep. Because she's not wrong. History does repeat itself. And every time a new order rises, it becomes the tyrant it once fought. The question that sits at the bottom of your stomach like a stone is this. If you wear the crown, do you eventually taste your own children? So you do the unthinkable. You let Zeus go. There's no applause. No forgiveness. Just tension. Raw, terrible, humming tension. Zeus rises from the stone floor slowly, His skin still crackling, his beard a mess of storm clouds and static. He doesn't scream. He doesn't strike. He just looks at you. There's a beat, just one heartbeat where you wonder if he's going to end you. Then he turns, ascends, and says nothing. And in that silence, the gods exhale, they move on. No punishments, no trials. Everyone just agrees, without agreeing, that nothing ever happened. The conspiracy becomes myth. Historians still argue whether it was real or a cautionary tale cooked up by later poets. Some say Hero was punished afterward. Others claim it was the moment Olympus became a true pantheon, where even the king had to respect rebellion. You know the truth. And so does Zeus. After that, he never looks at you the same. He doesn't smile at you in feasts, doesn't summon you without reason. But he doesn't interfere with the sea again, which might be the closest you'll ever get to an apology. You go back to your realm, not in shame, but in sovereignty. Something has shifted. The ocean feels deeper. The mortals begin praying to you for more than calm tides. They ask for justice, for storms to punish the wicked, for floods to wash away their grief. They don't just fear you now, they respect you. You walk the seafloor that night, miles beneath ships and fish and stars, and realize something important. You don't need to sit on Olympus to rule. You are Poseidon, not king. You wake one morning, if you can call it morning, at the bottom of the ocean, feeling the sea quieter than usual. No turbulence, no currents nudging your throne. Just an eerie stillness, like the entire ocean is holding its breath. It's not natural. You rise, trident humming against your palm. A ripple of intuition travels through your chest, down to your ankles. Something's wrong. Not war wrong. Not Zeus having a tantrum wrong. Older. You surface just off the coast of a forgotten island, one that mortals haven't charted yet, but which has existed since before memory. The waves are calm, the sky oddly pale. You stand on the shore, bare feet sinking into the wet sand, and there it is, a ruin. No mortal made this. Its angles are too sharp, its arches too impossible. Coral has begun to grow over the obsidian bones, and barnacles whisper secrets to passing turtles. But you know this place. It's Atlantis. Historians still argue whether Atlantis was real or allegorical, Plato's idealized warning about hubris, or simply a metaphor for collapsing empires. But you know the truth, because you were there. Not at the end, at the beginning. Atlantis was your dream. You wanted a city above the sea that mirrored your kingdom below. A place where mortals could coexist with divine logic. A harmony of salt and spirit. You helped its founding. Taught its architects how to shape stone like waves. Guided its first priest kings. Gave them tides to grow crops and storms to protect their shores, and for a while it worked. Atlantis thrived. Its people worshipped you, not out of fear, but reverence. They built monuments of pearl and gold that shimmered even in moonlight. But prosperity breeds arrogance. They stopped offering tribute, began to speak of taming the sea, not respecting it. A mortal king once even tried to command you, sending a message written on sharkskin demanding more coastline for his fleets. You replied by sending the coastline to him, violently. But Atlantis didn't fall that day. No, it held on barely. Its decline came in stages: earthquakes, tidal surges, unexplained disappearances. The gods withdrew one by one. Even you did, finally. Watching from the depths as pride hollowed the city from within. Then came the final wave. Some say you summoned it in anger. Others say it was the earth herself, taking back what should never have been given. You never confirm or deny either version, because the truth is heavier than myth. You didn't want to destroy it, you wanted it to listen. But Atlantis drowned anyway, and now, standing here again, centuries later, the guilt still stings. You run your fingers across a cracked column. It hums faintly, echoes of old prayers trapped in the stone. Poseidon, keeper of balance, lord of sea and silence, That's what they used to call you. You close your eyes just for a moment, and then you feel it. A presence, not divine, not mortal. Something in between. From the shadow of a fallen arch, a figure emerges. Not a ghost, more like a memory made flesh. A woman in robes of kelp and moonlight, eyes full of ancient tide. Do you remember me? She asks. You do. She was a priestess once, high oracle of Atlantis. Her name was Livia. You haven't spoken it aloud in millennia. You warned us, she says. You gave us chance after chance. You nod slowly. You didn't listen. We did, she says, just not loudly enough. She gestures behind her. A garden has grown in the ruins, bioluminescent coral blooming around statues, eels gliding through archways like cathedral incense. It's beautiful, peaceful. And for the first time you wonder, did anything survive the fall? Livia steps closer. There are whispers again. Mortals digging where they shouldn't. They want to reclaim Atlantis, to resurrect it. You scoff. They always do. But if they find it, she says softly, will you protect it, or finish what you started? That question clings to you like sea mist as you return to your palace. Days pass. Weeks, but the vision won't leave you. You dream of the old city, of laughter in market squares, of children swimming with dolphins, of fires burning from buildings that were never supposed to burn. And worst of all, you dream of Zeus walking those ruins, declaring them his, turning the final echoes of your dream into a golden theme park for his ego. You can't let that happen. So you make a decision. You send sea creatures, clever ones, to gently mislead human explorers. You sink ships that come too close, not to kill, just to warn. A soft reminder, this place is not for you. Meanwhile, deep in your throne room, you begin to carve a new chamber. A vault. Not for gold. For memory. Inside, you place a single object. A small sculpture of Atlantis, the way it looked before it sank, crafted from seashells, coral, and mortal bone. You hum a blessing over it. Let it sleep. Maybe, someday, you'll open it again. When mortals are ready. When you're ready. For now you guard it. Not out of vengeance, but reverence. Atlantis wasn't a failure. It was a warning. A lesson that you're still learning yourself, because what drowns doesn't always die. The sea is a teacher. It repeats its lessons in cycles, ebbing, crashing, pulling things away just to return them waterlogged and changed. And lately, you've noticed a troubling pattern in those lessons. Mortals. They single quotes re-getting bolder again. This time, it starts with a gift. A horse. You nearly laugh when you see it. A white stallion, brought as an offering to a temple on the edge of Thessaly. Your temple. They named it after you, at least. That's something. But this isn't just an ordinary gift. It's crafted with care, real care. Intricate braiding in the mane. Hooves polished with oils from distant isles. The priests claim it's a tribute, the finest steed ever bred, born of Poseidon's blessing. You didn't bless it. You didn't even notice it until it appeared at your doorstep. Still, the gesture tugs at something ancient in your chest, because once long ago you made horses. Shaped them from sea foam and wind. Mortal legs can't outrun tides, but you wanted to give them something that might try. And this one. This stallion is close to your original design. You whisper a current. Beneath its hooves, the horse whinnies, bows. For a moment, you smile. Then comes the second offering. But this time, it's a horse inside a horse. You sense it before it reaches. The shore, a massive wooden beast, hauled on wheels, hollow and humming with secrecy. Mortals roll it toward a rival city, pretending it's a gift of surrender. You tilt your head. It's clever. Crude, but clever. You watch from afar as the Trojans drag it past their gates, celebrating a victory they didn't earn. You whisper a warning in the waves that lap at their feet. No one listens. They never do. That night, soldiers pour out of the wooden belly, swords gleaming. Fires rise. Screams echo. The city of Troy, whose walls you once helped build with your own divine hands, is reduced to ash. And your stomach turns. The irony doesn't escape you. You, Poseidon, master of flood and fury, defeated not by force, but cleverness. And worse, your creation was the model. Historians still argue whether the Trojan horse was a real strategy or a poetic flourish. But you know it was real, because you felt it like a blade twisted in your legacy. You rise from the sea that night, drenched in fury. You don't strike Troy. That would be pointless. You've already done that once, remember? No, this time your anger turns seaward. Storms rise. Not because you're cruel, because you're wounded. The mortals have twisted your gift. Again, just like Atlantis. Just like the river kings who tried to fence off your coastline. You gave them wonder, and they turned it into war. Even your dolphins avoid you for days. Meanwhile, Zeus, he just shrugs when he hears of Troy. What did you expect? He says, mouth full of ambrosia. They're mortal. They lie, they build, they burn. It's practically their religion. You don't reply, because he's not wrong. And that's what makes it worse. You return to your sea, but your presence is no longer passive. Ships start vanishing in patches of fog. Sea monsters that once dozed in trenches begin to stir. The winds tangle into knots only you can undo. You're not attacking, you're correcting. The balance is off, and someone has to remember what the sea is. Not just a path, not just a resource. It's a living force. It gave the world its beginning. And if pushed hard enough, it will take its end. Still, your anger can't sustain you. It never does. Eventually the tides pull it away, dragging your rage into some underwater vent where it hisses and cools. One night, centuries later, you meet a mortal philosopher. Yes-meet. He single quotes, standing at the edge of a cliff in Crete, arguing loudly with a flock of gulls. Something about elements, probably. You rise from the water beside him, fully expecting to terrify the sandals off him. Instead, he blinks. You're taller than I expected, he says. You smirk. You're braver than you should be. He doesn't flee. Just sits, talks, asks questions about salt and tides, about chaos and choice. You answer a few. And for the first time in a while, you realize not all mortals are reckless. Some are simply searching. You part ways before dawn. The gulls resume their debate. Later, that man Thales, they call him, writes that all things come from water. That water is the origin of the cosmos. He's not entirely wrong. The sea remembers him kindly. After that, you start watching mortals a little differently. Less like ants. More like fish. Some swim in schools, some bite, some shine. A few learn to float. But you don't forgive easily. Not after Atlantis, not after Troy. You simply wait, because the sea outlives everything, even betrayal. You've grown patient. That's the thing mortals never quite understand about the sea. It doesn't crash all the time. Sometimes it just waits, silent, watching, counting the years like grains of sand slipping through coral-crusted fingers. And right now, you're waiting again. The world above is changing. Mortals have started building empires, and with empires come ships. Bigger ships, braver ones. They sail farther, fish deeper. Some even try to name the oceans, as if you'll obey their maps. You let them for now, because it's not about the ships, it's about the ambition. You can smell it, oily and eager. Mortals digging into the deep without reverence. Inventing reasons to believe they've conquered what they barely understand. They pray to you less often now, which is fine. You've never needed their songs. Still, you listen. You always listen. One prayer catches your attention low, desperate, half drowned. A storm has pinned a fleet near the pillars of Heracles. Sailors scream to any god who'll hear them. Zeus ignores them. Hera's too busy with her grudges, but you? You rise. Not in wrath, but curiosity. The sailors are young, scared. One of them, barely more than a boy, clutches a seashell charm and mutters your name like a question, not a demand. Not a deal, just, "Are you out there?" You answer with a current. It nudges their ship just enough to clear the rocks. They don't notice. They think it's luck. But the boy kisses the charm anyway. You watch him for a long time after. He grows into a navigator, charts the stars, warns others to respect the tides, writes that the sea is a god with moods deeper than any trench. You almost feel flattered. But then Olympus calls. Zeus wants a conference. The word itself is ridiculous. Gods in togas pretending they're corporate executives. Athena brings scrolls. Hermes brings jokes. Dionysus is, unsurprisingly, drunk. And Zeus? He announces a proposal, a standardization of divine intervention. He wants to limit your interactions with mortals. No more unapproved rescues, he says, twirling a lightning bolt like a baton. It confuses them, makes them think we're sentimental. You cross your arms. They're not pets, Zeus. He smirks. They're stories, nothing more. It takes every ounce of restraint not to summon a tsunami right there at the table. Athena, to her credit, tries to mediate. Maybe there's merit in consistency, she says, ever the strategist. If mortals can predict divine behavior, it strengthens faith. But what good is predictable faith? What happens when worship becomes routine? When belief is just a checkbox? The gods vote. You're outnumbered. Again. You return to the sea fuming. This is why you've stopped attending these Olympian salons. Too much ego, too little soul. They speak of order while the world drowns in nuance. So you do what you always do. You go deep. Past the thermal vents, past the lightless abysses, past even the places where myths dare not swim. Down here, the sea is untouched, primeval. It still remembers what the stars looked like before they were named. You let the pressure wrap around you like a weighted cloak. Down here, your thoughts are louder. You think of Atlantis, of Troy, of the boy with the seashell, of Zeus and his rules. You think of storms you could summon, but you don't, because a new idea is forming. If Olympus wants to control the narrative, maybe it's time you write your own. So you start whispering to the ocean currents, to the trench dwellers, and the reef keepers. To the creatures that live where no god's name echoes. You tell them stories. You describe mortals who respect the tide. Sailors who map but never claim. Children who toss coins into wells, not for luck, but for connection. And the sea remembers. Soon, mortals begin to dream of you again. Not as a roaring threat or punishment of fate, but as something deeper, the tide that takes and gives. The storm that follows silence. The God who waits. You don't need temples. You need memory. And the sea holds memory better than any stone. Then one day, centuries later, a new prayer reaches you. It's different, not desperate, not afraid, just curious. A girl sits at the edge of a coastal cliff, legs swinging over salt-worn rock. She doesn't speak aloud. She hums, taps her fingers against a shell, and thinks your name not as plea or warning, but as invitation. Appear beside her, just a shimmer in the surf. She doesn't scream, doesn't bow, just smiles. I thought you might be listening, she says, and you realize something you haven't felt in eons. Hope. Not for Olympus, not even for yourself, but for them. Because for every empire builder, every war starter, every Trojan horse carver, there are quiet ones. Waves don't only carry destruction, they carry dreams, and you're still the one steering them. You start spending more time near the surface, not in disguise, not the charming fisherman or the stern mariner of old tales. Just a shimmer in the water, a hush in the tide, a figure standing waist-deep as dawn paints the horizon. You're not hiding, you're watching, and what you see surprises you. Mortals, it seems, are finally beginning to learn. Not all of them, of course, Some still pollute, still slash at the sea with engines and greed, but others build floating cities that leave the coral untouched. They use wind instead of fire. They clean beaches, whisper apologies to the waves. It's clumsy, incomplete, but it's real. You don't tell Olympus. Zeus wouldn't care. He's too busy commissioning statues of himself that are somehow always shirtless, always heroic, even when representing events he slept through. You suspect the muses are getting tired of carving abias. Instead, you drift in and out of mortal ports. No lightning, no thunder, just tide and salt. Sometimes you send a breeze to fill a sail. Sometimes you calm a rogue current so a child's raft won't capsize. Other times you test them. A squall here, a whirlpool there, not to punish, to observe. Do they curse the sea? Or do they brace, adjust, respect? You begin to keep a mental list, not of names but of moments. Moments where humans choose humility over hubris, caution over conquest. You like those moments. They feel like Atlantis before it cracked, but not all the gods are pleased. One night, while you rest in your kelp-draped throne, Amphitrite, your long-suffering wife, glides in, expression tight. They're talking about you, she says. You arch an eyebrow. They usually are. No, she says, circling like a current. Really talking, saying you've gone soft. That you favor mortals over gods now. You sigh. Of course. Ares, ever the hammer-brained warlord, has probably been bellowing about it to anyone who listened between his staged battle reenactments. Apollo, golden boy of pattern and order, has likely weighed in with something poetic and passive-aggressive. Only Hades, ironically, keeps quiet. He's the only one who understands solitude and what it means to build a kingdom no one visits by choice. I haven't gone soft, you murmur. I've gone patient. Zeus doesn't see the difference. You nod. He wouldn't. And that's when she says it. He wants to strip your domains. The words hit harder than they should. Strip your domains. It's not just an insult. It's erasure. The political equivalent of saying, Poseidon is a mascot now. Let's give the sea to someone who actually uses it. He's proposing to transfer the currents, the storms, the tectonic furies to a committee. A divine committee. You feel the walls of your palace shiver. Outside, whales begin to flee. I made the sea, you whisper. I shaped the horses. I carved the rivers. I raised islands with a thought. He doesn't care, Amphitrite says. He wants obedience. There's a pause, a long one, the kind of pause that only the deep can hold. And then you rise. No trident, no roar. Just resolve. You summon the old magic. The kind you haven't touched since the Titanomachi. The kind that lingers in bones, in storms, in places mortals call haunted, and gods call sacred. You whisper to the waves, not words. Intent. The oceans stir, the crust groans. You walk the seafloor to the edge of the world, past shipwrecks and sleeping gods and mountains no one knows exist. At the very edge where the world almost frays into the void, you plant your palm on the seabed. And the sea rises. Not as a wall, not as a wave. As a presence. It arcs toward Olympus quietly. Slowly, like a reminder, like a warning, the clouds darken. Rain begins to fall on temples that haven't felt a drop in decades. Rivers overflow. Wells whisper your name. You don't strike. You don't have to. Because Olympus remembers that time you almost drowned. Zeus in his sleep. And while the others laugh about it now, Thunder God himself never quite did. You pull the water back. Gently. Just enough to soak the marble floors of the Olympian court. You don't say a word, and neither does Zeus. But the proposal? It vanishes. No vote. No minutes recorded. Just a quiet understanding, soaking into golden sandals. After that, the gods let you be. And the mortals? They keep dreaming. One builds an underwater observatory and names a coral formation after you. Another writes poems about how waves speak to him in his dreams. A little girl throws a seashell into the tide and says, "Thank you." You nod, and somewhere in the Mariana Trench, an ancient statue of your face shifts slightly and smiles. Somewhere in the mid-Atlantic, beneath layers of dark water and crushing silence, a shape begins to stir. It's not a leviathan, not a kraken, not one of your old, slow-skulled monsters from the age of chaos. It's older than all of them. And it's moving not toward land, but toward you. You don't flinch. You've been waiting, because you didn't just whisper to the oceans during your warning to Olympus. You woke things up. This one is called Thalassa, though mortals never knew the name. Not properly. She was once a goddess in her own right, before the Olympians, before even the Titans. The sea before the sea had names. You find her coiled in the midnight zone. Tendrils of ancient kelp twisted in her hair, eyes like fossilized whirlpools. She doesn't speak, not aloud, but her thoughts roll into yours like ripples across a still lake. "You remember me," she says, or thinks. You nod. "I was the sea before you walked it." You nod again. "Why now?" She asks, and hears. "The truth. You don't know. Maybe it's loneliness. Maybe it's instinct. Or maybe you're just tired of being Poseidon alone. Because even gods need reminders of what they are." You sit beside her, two titanic minds in silence. She offers you a pearl, black as volcanic glass. You accept. It pulses faintly in your palm, like a heart still dreaming. Later, you carry it back to your palace and place it at the center of a chamber no one visits. You don't tell anyone. Not even Amphitr, especially not Zeus, because you're beginning to realize something. Power is not in dominion, it's in memory. And the old sea remembers more than Olympus ever will. Meanwhile, above the surface, things are escalating. Mortals have discovered fire again, not literal flame, but something worse: explosives, bombs that can boil the ocean, submarines that carve through your depths like arrogant beetles, oil rigs that bleed into your currents without shame. You watch it all. The oceans begin to choke, and you feel every drop of pain. Not because you're angry, because you're connected. Each reef destroyed? It's a line across your chest. Each poisoned fish, a whisper silenced. You try small warnings: first currents shifting, buoys vanishing, whales breaching where they shouldn't. But they don't listen. So one day, you go further. You flood a facility. Just one. No one dies. But their machines short-circuit. Their sensors fail. Their hard drives are salted beyond repair. And for the first time in decades, they stop drilling. It makes the news. Freak anomaly, they call it. You roll your eyes, but one mortal catches your attention. A scientist, young, sharp-eyed. She begins writing papers about ocean intelligence, not metaphorically, but literally. She theorizes that the sea may contain a collective memory, a form of slow, ancient thought. She doesn't know how right she is. You visit her one night. Not in human form, just a mist, a whisper in the fog. She wakes, sits up in bed, and asks a question into the dark: "Are you real?" You answer, not with words, but a sudden gust that smells of salt and forgotten storms. Her windows rattle. She nods, almost like she expected it. Later, she'll publish her findings under a pseudonym. The ocean knows. It's mocked by her peers, ignored by journals, but it spreads. And that's all you need. You start planting more of those seeds, dreams, symbols, a voice in a bottle that washes up on a shore. A sunken statue resurfacing overnight. Not vengeance. Memory. Meanwhile, Zeus grows restless. He knows you're active again. He doesn't like it. Why stir the waters? He asks one day, his voice echoing across Olympus like a poorly aimed stage monologue. They're already stirred. You reply, the other gods sense it too. Demeter notices. The tides are changing patterns. Apollo feels the humidity rise where it never did before. Even Artemis whispers to the river nymphs that something beneath the sea has awakened. They're not wrong. You're not just Poseidon anymore. You're becoming the god of storms, yes. Of earthquakes and whirlpools, yes. But also of reckoning. Because while Zeus postures and pontificates, while mortals throw plastic into your veins, you've begun to respond. Not out of cruelty, out of stewardship. The sea was never meant to be owned, not by mortals. Not by gods. Only tended. And you are its last, stubborn gardener. One night, a sailor falls overboard in a cyclone. She cries out, not to the sky, not to her ancestors. To you. And you catch her, gently, cradle her in a kelp-sling hammock of current and foam until the storm passes. Set her back on deck without fanfare. She never sees you, but she builds a shrine. The next day, small, simple, driftwood and shells, no gold. No sacrifices, just a name carved in stone. Poseidon, keeper of the deep. You sit beside it that night, invisible. And for the first time in centuries, you feel seen. The gods start calling you unpredictable, which is rich, considering Dionysus once turned an entire village into grapevines for mispronouncing his name. But fine, let them whisper. You know what this really is. You're no longer convenient. You used to be the god of things they could measure: storms, horses, earthquakes. You rumbled, they reacted, and balance was restored. But now you're drifting towards something messy, something that philosophical. They don't like it, especially not Zeus. He calls a divine summit. His newest term for listen to me, talk until your ears bleed. Olympus buzzes with invitations and ego. You receive yours via a pelican, which seems intentional. It bites you. You respect it. When you arrive, the air is thick with ambrosia and tension. The other gods lounge like politicians, sipping nectar, speaking in curated epics. Hermes cracks a joke about Poseidon going full cryptic sea wizard. You don't laugh. Zeus launches into it. There's concern, he says, arms wide, like he's opening a curtain on a tragedy no one asked for, that your recent behavior undermines the agreed-upon celestial order. You raise an eyebrow. You mean I've stopped being quiet? Apollo chimes in, we're gods. But we function because we represent constants, predictability, symbols. You scan the room slowly. And what symbol do I violate? No one answers, because they don't know. Because that's the problem. You've stopped playing by the diagram. You're not just Poseidon of the sea anymore. You've become a reminder that even gods evolve. That divinity, like water, moves. Mortals are noticing. Hera says, almost gently. Good, you think. Some are even praying to you as a god of renewal, of balance. You nod. Then Zeus slams his palm on the table. Lightning cracks behind him so theatrical it's almost charming. This is a warning. Ah, there it is. Not a declaration of war yet, but a line drawn in salt. You don't respond. Not with thunder, not with a wave. Just a question. Who made you king? There's a pause. A full, divine beat of held breath. He doesn't answer, because he remembers. Because you remember, the lot was drawn. Sky, sea, underworld. It wasn't divine mandate, it was a dice roll. You didn't lose. You just didn't cheat. Later, after the summit dissolves into smaller arguments, you find Athena perched on a balcony. Studying the horizon. You're changing, she says. Am I? She nods, less wave, more undertow. You like that. As you return to your realm, the water greets you like an old friend. Cool, loyal, ever listening. And something begins to form. Not a storm. Yet. A pull. The sea is calling to something older than language. It wants you to return. Not to Olympus. Not to conquest, but to origin. You go deeper than any god has swum in an age. Past hydrothermal vents that speak in bubbles. Past trenches that whisper names lost before Titan bones turn to sediment. There, In the darkest fold of the world, you find it. A temple. Not one built by mortals, not even built by you. Just there. Etched into the seabed. Worn by current. Lit by glowing plankton that pulse in rhythms too precise to be random. You place your hand on the stone dot, it responds. A pulse. And suddenly, your head fills with voices, not screaming, not angry. Just full. The memories of the sea itself, unfiltered. Entire eons surge through you, glaciers birthing rivers. Tectonic plates dancing like lovers. Whales singing before language. You stagger back, not in pain, in awe, because this is what you've always been, not the god of water. The voice of the sea. And now, the sea is speaking back. You realize something else in that moment. Your role was never about ruling the oceans. It was about listening to them. Mortals think gods control the elements. But you serve them. And the sea is ready for change. When you return to the surface, the world feels different. Brighter. Not because it is, but because you are. You find that same girl from before, the one who built the driftwood shrine. She's older now, teaching others. Her shrine has grown. Not bigger. Just deeper. It's covered in names. Not of gods. Of places. Corals. Rivers. She's teaching that reverence isn't about power. It's about presence. You whisper a breeze through her hair. She smiles. Later that night, mortals dream of you. Not with tridents or tempests, but as a wave that speaks. A tide that forgives. A presence they know without knowing how. And in those dreams, they listen. You always thought it would be thunder that ended Olympus. That someday Zeus would go too far, hurl a bolt too wide, and the sky would fracture under its own arrogance. Or perhaps Ares would finally win a war he shouldn't, and everything would unravel in red. But in the end, it's not a war that shakes Olympus. It's a vote. They call it the Accord, a unifying doctrine meant to consolidate divine influence for efficiency. Hermes says with his usual smirk. The wording is bureaucratic poetry, all diplomacy and olive branches, but you can smell what it really is. A power grab. Zeus wants centralized control. Apollo wants standardization of worship. Athena wants to document everything. Even Demeter, reluctantly, agrees to simplify the seasonal prayers. And you? You sit in your coral-wrapped seat, listening, saying nothing, until they get to the sea. They want to divide it, assign sections to lesser deities, give out permits for intervention, regulate storms. They want to take your realm and turn it into a schedule. And that's when you speak. Not loudly. Not angrily. Just clearly. No. Zeus blinks. Excuse me? You stand slowly. Water drips from your robes onto the marble floor, and it hisses. The sea isn't a committee. It isn't a chart or a calendar. It is not yours to measure, Apollo shifts. It belongs to Olympus. It belongs to itself, you say, and I belong to it. There's a silence so thick even the fates seem to pause their weaving. And then softly, almost too softly, Hades speaks. He's right. You turn surprised. Hades doesn't usually vote, doesn't usually appear. But he's here now, shadows curling around his feet like house cats. The sea and the underworld, he says. We don't serve Olympus, we border it. It's a subtle difference, but it changes everything. Zeus scowls. This is mutiny. No, you say this is memory. You raise your hand, and for the first time in centuries, you summon the full sea. Not a storm, not a wave, the sea itself, salt in depth and pressure and dark. It pours into the halls of Olympus, not to drown, but to remind. Gods stagger back as ocean memory floods around their ankles. Every mistake, every broken promise, every prayer ignored. You lock eyes with Zeus. We were equals once. He says nothing, because he remembers that coin toss too. Athena steps forward, cautiously. Poseidon, she says, her voice even. What do you want? It's a good question, Not revenge. Not dominion. A throne. Just autonomy. You want the sea back, not because it was taken, but because it was forgotten, dismissed, treated like background instead of origin. Hera narrows her eyes. And if we refuse? You smile, soft and terrible. Then the sea will choose. And oh, you can feel it choosing. Below, the tides shift, not in anger. In alignment. Mortals begin waking from strange dreams of oceans that whisper their names, of coastlines receding and returning in heartbeat patterns. Fish swim in spirals beneath ships. Seaweed writes messages in ancient shapes. You didn't command this, you simply let it happen. Because that's the difference now. You're not directing the sea, you're translating it. The gods, deliberate, for hours, days. Time stutters in Olympus. When power is at stake. But in the end, they agree. Not with a vote. With a silence that feels like surrender. You don't gloat. You descend. Back to your realm. Back to the deep, and something shifts. You feel it in the trenches. In the tectonic sighs. In the way coral blooms faster where your shadow falls. The sea is no longer just a domain. It's a dialogue. You're not the god of storms anymore. You're the god of change. Later, you visit the surface. Quietly. A beach where a child builds a sandcastle too close to the tide. Her father warns her it'll wash away. She grins. That's okay, she says. The sea's just borrowing it. You chuckle. And send a wave that leaves the castle just intact enough. She squeals in delight. And you realize, this is what power looks like now. Not domination, but interruption, a touch, a tilt. A tide turn just slightly sideways. Back in Olympus, Zeus adjusts. Slowly, he still speaks of thunder. Still demands respect. But he doesn't challenge you, not directly. You're not a subordinate anymore. You're a neighbor. And that is a very different thing. The world above continues on, chaotic, hopeful, self-destructive. But now, it listens. Not always. Not enough. But sometimes. And for a god who once roared, just to be heard, that is a miracle. The sea is calm today. Not still, never still, but calm in that deep knowing way. Like it has nothing to prove. Like it's finally settled into its own skin. You drift along the surface in no particular form, more presence than person. Salt air curls into your lungs, not that you need to breathe. But habits are hard to break, and you watch the coastline below. Tiny mortals with sand between their toes. Kites snapping in the breeze. Boats bobbing like the world isn't on fire. And maybe it's not. Not today. One of the boats is different. Small, handmade, not meant for fishing or trade or glory. Just one person on board, a woman, alone. No sails, no motor. Just a paddle and a slow, steady rhythm. She's not lost. She's looking. You glide closer, invisible to her eyes but clear to her instinct. She stops paddling and stares directly into the water where your form distorts the light. I was hoping you'd show up. She says, you're intrigued. Mortals usually pray, bargain, plead. She waited. I read about you, she says. Not the myths, the newer stuff. The people who say you changed. You ripple around her, not quite answering. I want to ask something, she continues. Not for luck, not for favor, just for truth. You settle beside her like a tide. Is it worth it? She asks, trying to save something that doesn't know it's drowning. Ah, there it is. The question that's been bubbling in your own chest for ages. You don't answer right away. Instead, you tilt the boat slightly, not enough to scare, just to shift her view. Beneath her, dolphins spiral in slow, deliberate circles. Schools of fish dart in synchrony. Coral blooms pulse with subtle color. Life, still here. Still trying. Whisper back in a voice older than waves. Nothing knows it's drowning until it breathes again. She closes her eyes, breathes. Later, she'll return to shore and write nothing about the encounter. She won't try to explain. But she starts cleaning the beach every morning. should teach her students that the ocean isn't a metaphor, it's family. And you return to your palace. But not for rest, you're building something. A new chamber, carved into the crust of the world, where lava cools instantly and pressure sings like bells. It's not for worship. It's for listening. You bring the pearl Thalassa gave you. You embed it into the ceiling, where it glows like a heartbeat in stone. Around it, you inscribe what the sea has told you. Not in Greek or Latin or any tongue Olympus ever bothered to learn. You use current, motion, memory. And for the first time, your palace has a language even the gods can't read. Only the sea can. And that's enough. Outside, things keep moving. Mortals send machines to the bottom of your world now. Not out of arrogance, but curiosity. Some even send robots that leave things behind, offerings of data. Yes, but also poems in waterproof containers. One sends down a tiny sculpture of a sea god with arms wide, holding nothing. You like that one. Elsewhere, Olympus stirs. Zeus is quieter now. Still loud in ceremony, but thinner in presence. Like a cloud spreading too far. Hera, surprisingly, begins reaching out. Not to you, directly, but to the rivers. She's seen what happens when domain becomes conversation. You think she's curious. The other gods follow suit in odd ways. Apollo writes a symphony that can only be heard underwater. Artemis starts mapping moonlight across the tides. Even Ares asks if you'd help coordinate relief after a coastal war. You say yes, because this was never about vengeance. It was always about balance. Meanwhile, mortals begin shifting. Some still cling to conquest. That never fully ends. But others, many others, start planting seagrass, tracking whales, praying not to you but through you. They've started calling you something new. Not God. Not Lord. Not Master. Witness. It sends a tremor through your spine the first time you hear it, because that's what you are now. Not a punisher. A presence. The one who saw the rise and fall of cities. Who heard Atlantis laugh before it drowned. Who felt Troy's last heartbeat under ash. Who waited, and now, you simply remain, still a god, but also something else. A keeper, a reminder. The one who stayed. At low tide, children stack stones in spiral patterns. Believing it brings good luck. You don't correct them. They're right. One child places a single shell in the center of the spiral and whispers, "Thank you." You feel it in your core. Not power. Not praise. Just connection. You turn away from the shore, back into the depths. And the sea sighs in your wake. Not in grief, not in fury, but in recognition. You never thought the end would begin with a whisper. Not a war cry, not thunder, not the crack of divine punishment. Just a soft, almost embarrassed announcement, spoken by a mortal in a conference room built of glass and steel. We've discovered a signal. At first, you ignore it. Mortals find odd noises in the deep all the time: tectonic groans, whale songs, machines they can't understand but keep running anyway. But this time, it's different. The signal pulses at a frequency even you don't recognize, which is unsettling. You dive past trenches, past volcanoes, past the ruins of your early works, statues broken by pressure, altars crusted with barnacles. Deeper still, and there it is, a sound, not a voice, not a machine, but something in between, repeating, steady, almost patient. You hover above it, hesitant. The last time you heard something truly new in the sea, it was the voice of Thalassa. This feels older, deeper, a frequency buried not in the sea, but beneath it. You reach toward it, and it touches you back. Suddenly you're elsewhere, not physically, but in memory. A flood of images, sharp and cold, not your memories. The seas, before you, before gods, before language. Back when the planet was lava, and silence and steam. You see the ocean forming. See it choosing. It didn't happen by accident. The sea gathered itself, molecule by molecule, pulling gravity tight around it like a shawl. It wasn't chaos. It was intention. In you. You were never its ruler, you were its interpreter. That's what the signal is. It's not calling for help. It's asking if you're still listening. You return to your palace in silence. The walls feel smaller now. Not from shame, but from humility. You've spent eons thinking yourself a god of the sea, when in truth, you are the sea's mouthpiece. You are not in command. You are in service. Mortals sense a change. They always do. Storms lessen. Currents reroute themselves gently around reefs. Shipping lanes clear of whales as if choreographed. Meteorologists call it anomaly. You know better. The sea is adjusting, not to survive, but to teach. Even Olympus feels it. The gods grow quieter, their interventions fewer. As if some ancient instinct is telling them, step aside. Let the deep speak. Zeus approaches you, not in wrath, but in uncertainty. Is this your doing? You shake your head. No, it's older than me, he frowns. Then what's coming? You answer with a shrug. Maybe not an end. Maybe a beginning. He doesn't like that, but he respects it. Zeus may be thunder, but thunder respects. Silence, if only because it always follows it. You begin making preparations. Not defenses. Translations. You gather messages from dolphins, from coral, from the rhythm of tides across centuries. You start inscribing them, carefully, into stone. A new codex. Not for gods, for mortals. A guide not to worship, but to coexistence. The first copy washes up on a beach in Crete. Waterproofed in volcanic glass. It contains no words. Just spirals. Tides. Marks that look like waves frozen mid-movement. A child finds it. He draws the patterns in the sand, and the sea nods. Elsewhere, a small island nation announces it will no longer expand its borders. The ocean, their leader says, is not our possession. It is our parent. You feel something deep in the seabed. Exhale. The signal pulses again. Not louder. Just clearer. The gods gather in council one last time, not for law. Not for debate. For witnessing. Even Ares stays quiet. You speak last. I think our time as shepherds has passed. Hermes raises an eyebrow. Then what are we now? You pause, stewards. The word tastes honest. Later that night, Amphitrite stands beside you at the edge of the sea. You changed, she says, not accusing, just noting. You nod. We all must. She smiles, bittersweet. You were always the wild one. And now, you're the still one. You take her hand. I'm just listening better. She squeezes it. And together, you watch the tide come in, one last time. Not because anything ends tonight, but because tomorrow, something new begins. And the sea is ready. It begins not with a crash, but with a breath, not yours. Not Zeus's. Not even the sea's. A child standing ankle-deep in tide, breathes in salt air and speaks 3 words. I remember you. You hear it from miles away, not with ears, but with everything else. With current, with instinct, with that ancient part of your divinity that predates the Olympian. Chorus. Because she's right. She does remember you. Not from a statue or a scroll or a bedtime story. From somewhere before, from dreams passed down like fossils, from water carried in the blood. And in that moment, something opens. Not a portal, not a rift, a relationship. Between mortal and sea, between memory and meaning. It's working. Across the world, other mortals begin to feel it too. They call it the tide sense, though no one agrees on what it actually is. Some say it's intuition. Others say emotion. A few say it's madness. You say it's homecoming. They no longer pray to you. They speak to you. They ask questions. Not for miracles, but for context. Why did this beach erode? What does the algae want? Where do the currents sleep? And you answer not always with words, but with signals, swells, shifts, patterns they can learn if they Listen long enough. You're no longer the center of their worship. You're their interface. And gods? Real gods? Don't need altars, they? Need utility. Olympus fades into myth. Not gone. Just. Pause. The gods disperse. Ares joins the front lines of peacekeeping missions, ironically thriving in conflict negotiation. Artemis trains wildlife rangers. Hestia disappears completely into kitchens, into campfires, into warmth. And Zeus? He remains on his throne. Alone. Not by punishment. By choice. He watches the world with a heavy crown and heavier memory. And every now and then, he glances at the sea and nods. He knows. Mortals begin rebuilding their relationship with the ocean. Not through control, but collaboration. They don't try to conquer the tides. They build homes that float, farms that drift, energy that hums in harmony with the waves. You visit them sometimes. In the form of a breeze, a soft blue shimmer in shallow water. A song they hum but can't name, and they know you, not as Poseidon, the terrible, but as something simpler, something truer, the listener. One morning, a boy stands on a cliff above the sea. He opens a book filled with glyphs. You design symbols of the ebb and flow, of storm and calm. He studies, he learns. He smiles. Behind him, his teacher says, "You know, some say that's a dead language." And the boy replies, "It's not dead. It's just resting." You smile too, because he's right. And in the deepest part of the ocean, where the pearl still pulses in the ceiling of your quietest chamber, you sit with Thalassa again. She's older now. Or younger. It's hard to tell with beings like her. She says nothing, just places. Her hand on yours. No prophecy. No ending. Just peace. And maybe that's what all of this was about from the beginning. Not vengeance, not dominance, not even redemption. Just recognition that you, god of the shifting blue, were never meant to command the world. You were meant to echo it. And now? You do. Quietly. Beautifully. Endlessly. And now? It's time to return. Back from the depths, back from the throne of waves and whispering trenches, back from the shifting domain of Poseidon, who no longer thunders, but listens. Let yourself float now just a little. Drift weightless in the silence, like kelp in a current, no resistance, no urgency. Imagine the pressure of the deep sea easing off your chest. The last roar of the surf softens, replaced by that soothing rhythm, in and out. Like the breath of the planet itself, all the gods have faded, and the sea remains not loud. Not wild, just present. You might not feel Poseidon walking beside you anymore. But maybe, just maybe, you'll catch a shimmer in the foam next time you walk the shore. Maybe the tide will nudge you gently, and you'll remember something you never knew you knew. That water holds memory, and you're part of it. So rest now. You've made the journey. You've stood beside gods, whispered to whales, and watched Olympus tremble under the weight of its own forgetting. And now? It's okay to sleep. Let the sea hold you one last time. Softly. Completely. Like it always has. Like it always will. Good night. Traveler of tides. The sea sees you, and it remembers.